Hey gang, it's Tuesday, April 20th, and following the Sunday live stream, we're at Bohemia National Cemetery, and so many Polish and Czech, and it made me think of coming to this place. We're in Crest Hill, Illinois now today. Snowy day. It's probably a perfect day, gloomy, to tell this story of something that happened in World War II to the Czech people that is memorialized here, but a really sad event. So I've got the umbrella today, keep the camera dry, so let's take a walk and let's make our way to this memorial here in Crest Hill. Have you heard of the movie Anthropoid, Operation Anthropoid? A really amazing movie. And the movie is about the story of the assassination of a despicable German man. If you could call him that, a beast. He was Reinhard Heydrich, and he was known as the Hangman of Prague. Hitler would call him the man with the iron heart because he just loved to execute people. He was a bad guy. He was sent there to basically eradicate the Czech people. And it was in the little town of Lidice. Lidice, some pronounce it Lidice. We're going to talk about what happened there, because I'm not going to get into the story of the assassination other than I'll give a little. The two men, Kubish and Kashik, were trained by the British, and they dropped in, they parachuted in, and they waited, and they got to know Heydrich's schedule, and they found that on the way that he would always go to Prague Castle at his office, that on the route there was a sharp right turn, and they had to slow down. Now Heydrich was such an arrogant ass. He'd drive with his convertible like no one can touch me, and he made the turn. These two guys were waiting for him, and the one guy had the Sten gun, admittedly a really bad gun that the British had made. They weren't known for their guns. It jammed, and Kubish threw the grenade from his briefcase, or throw the whole briefcase. Ended up, instead of going in the car, it went under the car. It blew up, and Reinhard Heydrich was injured. Driver was not. So what does he do? He stands up, he pulls his gun, and he starts shooting. Well, it was kind of a comedy of errors. Not a comedy, you know what I mean. It was kind of a big mess up, but the long and the short of it is it ended up working, because the guys got away and Heydrich died a few days later. Now, by the way, these two guys were killed along with other collaborators. You can watch the movie. But the horsehair got in his skin, under his skin, and he died of blood poisoning. And Hitler was mad. Here we are. Here we are at the memorial. Now, the original memorial was not located here. It was located in the area of Crest Hill, and the reason it's here is because there's an enclave of people, Czech people here, I think from that area, maybe even relatives of survivors. But right after World War II, they came here They renamed this town Lidice, and feel free to chime in. I've heard it both ways, and I'd be interested to know what is the right way to pronounce the town. But they did come here, and sadly the original memorial was vandalized in '95, so they moved it over here. It's beautiful. Now, why is this here? Why is there a memorial to this little town? What's the story? There's a huge story, guys. Because the town was wiped off the face of the earth by Hitler and his cronies. And I'm going to tell you what happened. There were reprisals, big reprisals, that were to come late in the afternoon of May 27th, where the SS came in and they proclaimed in Prague a state of curfew and emergency, and they said that anyone who helped the attackers would be executed along with their families. And a search involving 21,000 men began, and 36,000 houses were checked. And as the eulogies were happening at Heydrich's funeral, just as the eulogy was going on, they made the decision, which was on June 9th, that they were going to make up for his death. And they were going to go to this town that they had heard a rumor that they had assisted. You know, and it could have been these men were passing through, who knows? And it could have been totally wrong. But they went there to Lidice, and they were to massacre all the men, which they did. They took them to the edge of town, to a farm, with mattresses, so the ricochets wouldn't hurt them, and 5 at a time, and then it wasn't fast enough, 10 at a time, they executed these men, and any of the wives that would not separate from these men. But that wasn't enough. They had to go back, and they took a total of 203 women and 105 children to the village school in a nearby town, and they detained them there for 3 days. And on June 12, 1942, 184 of them were loaded on trucks, driven to the railway station, and forced onto the cars and taken to the concentration camp at Ravensbrück, where they were forced to work in leather processing and road building. And by the way, I think there were 6 or 8 of the women who were pregnant. And what did they do? They did forced abortions on them. Only the Nazis, right? The children were brought to the camp, and they were only bringing what they wore, and the orders were not to give them medicine or care. Shortly after arriving, 7 of the kids were selected because they had blonde hair and they looked Aryan, so they were given the top-end SS official families for reprogramming and upbringing, while the rest of the kids, and by the way, Adolf Eichmann played key in this. He's the one who made the final decisions. They were taken to Chełmno concentration camp, which was an extermination camp 43 miles away, and they were gassed to death. You know how they were gassed to death? They were gassed to death in those Magarus gas vans. These gas vans, it was said, were mobile units that operated too slow, and it took victims 20 minutes to die. And the drivers found that distracting and disturbing, so they Stopped doing that after a while. But out of the 105 children, 82 died there. And 6 others of that group, of the 105, died in the German labor-born orphanages. And 17 did return home. Now the town, the entire town, you know, and again, that wasn't even enough. They had to take the town and raze it to the ground. They brought the bulldozers in, they knocked the houses, the churches, the schools, they knocked everything down to the ground. They filled in the lake, and get this, they went to the graveyard. They dug up all the graves of the ancestors, recent and old, stole the jewelry and gold teeth, and destroyed the graves. They wanted to definitely wipe the town right off the face of the earth. Lidice. Well, they didn't succeed. Because you know what happened? I'll tell you what happened. There were several British towns. There were towns in America. This town here, they renamed their towns Lidice. Very cool. Everyone was just so appalled. Winston Churchill ordered the destruction of several German villages in retaliation, which wasn't probably the thing to do, but you can imagine the anger. And as far as the actual town of Lidice, they did not reoccupy it. They built a memorial there that is just unforgettable, and we're gonna go look at that now. We're gonna transport over there. I wish I could for real. Someday I will take you there. But there is the statues of the children, modeled after many of the actual children, whose pictures I will include, those that are available. It is haunting to look in those eyes, to see the suffering, and lest we never forget. Here it says, lest we forget. I just said, lest we never forget. So it says here, in memory of Lidice, Czechoslovakia, whose citizens perished by Nazi brutality June 10th in 1942. And I see the American flag here and the Czech flag. How cool. But the most important statement is to never forget, and that the truth shall prevail. So it's kind of a sad one today, guys, but I thought this story was important to mention. So see you on the next one.